Meteorologist Matt Lopon here as we're looking at a potential for active and severe weather tonight and this evening. We're looking at, unfortunately, an overnight chance that does include damaging severe winds and possibly tornadoes. Some questions still remain around that tornado threat, but we do expect we will have a strong line of thunderstorms move in around and after midnight tonight, extending deep into the overnight period. So I'll be perfectly honest, I'm probably going to go take a nap here in just a little bit. If there was ever a reason why we should take a Sunday nap, maybe this is a good idea for that. But unfortunately, to go along with that is that severe weather threat. Nothing out there at this point here. Want to make sure we kind of emphasize that for a moment. The latest look at radar across the region, just mostly clear. There are some thunderstorms back there south of Birmingham and more down in the southern part of the state that have prompted some tornado warnings, but nothing up here in North Mississippi that we are watching some zones around on the potential for development over the course of the next few hours here. So still, that remains to be seen as we're kind of awaiting that. The severe weather risk as it's outlined for today, as you'll note, does include all locations in the area in the northern half, northern two-thirds of the state. Well, the whole state has at least a limited threat for severe weather. And while, again, this says Sunday, we expect the main impacts to be after midnight tonight, extending deep into the overnight time period. The tornado risk is there, certainly one that we are watching. I'll go ahead and make sure we refresh these, get the all up to date there. But you'll note that the area where you see this hatching there, that's where there's the greatest potential to maybe see a strong tornado. The north and west portion of our area in particular, north and west Mississippi, most impacted by that. This is not as high an opportunity for severe weather and tornadoes as what we had a couple weeks ago. It is definitely higher than what we had last week, just for some comparative purposes. That said, it only takes that one storm to cause the one issue there to obviously have big problems. And because of the overnight vulnerability that will go with this, obviously there's some concerns that we're still dealing with. The wind potential on this does include a fairly widespread chance to see some strong wind gusts. You don't see that hatched, that kind of dashed area we showed you on the one before, an indication of less likelihood to get those extremely strong wind gusts. Still, you'll notice the greatest opportunity peaking in northeast Mississippi and extending out into Alabama and mid-Tennessee. The reason for that is we do expect storms that will be individualized back toward the west, and then as they grow toward the east, they're more likely to produce wind and strong damaging wind gusts, and perhaps then spin up tornadoes with those. So that those are kind of the threats overnight. They kind of go in conjunction with one another there. Looking at the hail potential, certainly that's maximized back to the west. And that gives you an idea. The individual storms where this is maximized back to the west, peak tornado threat when it's kind of peak hail threat. And then as they kind of consolidate into a line working eastward, more of a wind threat. And then gradually, as they work their way to the, well to the east, that threat actually, believe it or not, continues into tomorrow. As you'll note there, that level 3 risk extending through southeastern parts of Alabama and much of Georgia and locations to the east. And this cutoff here between this first graphic and this one here basically is just dealing with the timing overnight. Really, I say overnight, around dawn tomorrow morning as we get the changeover, because technically these graphics go from 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. or from current time until 7 a.m. So that's why even though this says Sunday, this is overnight tonight, and this is likely well after midnight before we start seeing some of those impacts there. Tornado risk still there for tomorrow and into the day for locations to the east, as is the strong wind and the hail risk. There are additional risks for severe weather later this week. Tuesday, probably the one day where we don't really have one, but after that, I can make an argument for Wednesday, as you'll notice, already a level 3 risk encompassing a good chunk of our area, and Thursday, a risk as well. I could have made an argument again for Friday. We're a little too far out, and with so many chances kind of lining up here in a row, there's a lot more questions than answers on that. You know, as one day's outbreak of storms will then impact the next, will impact the next, will impact the next. So that's why only showing through Thursday at this point here. But the reality being that tonight and early tomorrow is the first, and then we're back Wednesday, Thursday, maybe Friday. We'll have to see. Unfortunately, a very active pattern ahead over the course of the next few days here. Satellite perspective around the region does show that we've seen some sunshine kind of getting in here. I'm going to zoom this in just a little bit more if I can, just to kind of show that. But, you know, we also have plenty of moisture that's kind of streaming northward. So fuel is not exactly limited with this event here. But the initiation is. By that I mean something to really get the individual storms going. That's most likely out here into Arkansas And as they eventually form those individual thunderstorms, they kind of work their way toward the east. The severe weather threat, I would say, largely overall, is definitely focused more to our north. In saying that, and going back to that first graphic there, this is a very large risk for severe weather, including our region. So we're kind of on the southern edge of a larger chance, larger opportunity for widespread damaging winds and a tornado threat to go with that. So let's look kind of at some of the projections here and what they are showing. This one, what we call the HRRR, the HRRR. This one, and I want to zoom this in a little bit more. Give me a moment to do that. What you'll note certainly kind of captures those storms we have down in South Mississippi pretty much at this time. Does a decent job with that. It also has quite a few thunderstorms kind of breaking out there into Arkansas, more likely to be producing tornadoes, things of that nature, that direction. I won't dig too far into that. That's not my area. I have not spent a whole lot of time looking at up there, but we do know that there's kind of a maximized tornado threat this afternoon and this evening for locations up that direction. You know, storms do develop southward on a front that's kind of moving in, and as they continue to develop southward, we're now looking at 8 p.m. here, 9 p.m. as they're trying to develop south. But you'll notice not a ton of activity between really now and 9 o'clock gets going in this south of I-40 zone back to the south and west. This would be the zone where we would watch if we were to see something earlier than, say, around midnight, give or take an hour or two. This would be the zone we'd be watching. And you'll note that in this projection, a lot of our projections, there's not a ton of activity that occurs in that area just because of the overall atmospheric structure this afternoon. What you will note is that how this line does continue to kind of build in. This is picking up what we call 5Z, 5 Zulu, or basically midnight based on our current daylight savings orientation. And so those thunderstorms kind of build into our area overnight and become fairly widespread. But you'll notice here, I don't get the reds out of here until where it says 12Z. That'd be 7 a.m. tomorrow. Point being this is 6 a.m., 5 a.m., 4, 3, 2, 1 a.m. So you'll notice that it's really after midnight in particular that we have our peak potential to see whatever we see, which does include, unfortunately, the potential to possibly spin up a couple isolated tornadoes. So yeah, really through that whole time period is when we are most concentrating on that. I'm going to go back a model run here on this particular version, and you'll notice a pretty good agreement on the timing related to that. So we feel fairly solid. If I just stop it here, we're just going to pick this up. This would be 1 a.m., right? And I show from Alcorn County back there through like Lafayette County. So just kind of the northern tier of counties in our area at that point around midnight. And what I'm going to force us to do is we're going to look at what we'll call the run-to-run similarity to this. The point in this being, notice how, generally speaking, give and take a county or two, it's pretty similar location, especially when we go the last, say, 5 to 6 hours worth. It's all very much aligned on its timing, and most of our projections are as well. So the big takeaway is whatever happens will happen mainly after midnight, around midnight and for the northwest portion of the area, and then after midnight for most of us. Unfortunately, that means that's at a time of day where we're most vulnerable. So we need to make sure we have that weather call, code red, something to wake us up and let us know that we could be in danger potentially. So don't miss that statement on this, because that's one of the big things, is that overnight is when we will have our greatest potential. So what then is this? So looking at that, there are a lot of different things we look at in this situation. One of those is that updraft helicity, or basically looking at the rotation tracks, right? And we definitely have some in our area. It's hard to ignore, though, some of the rotation tracks that are more significant up into Arkansas, not just the previous run I was looking at there, but the current run. Now, positionings differ, but pretty good indications that certainly the threat for strong tornadoes is greatest to the north. In saying that, you'll notice we do have some of those tracks that do extend into our area. More likely, I would say, to see brief tornadoes in our area. That's not to say weak tornadoes, but that is to say brief tornadoes. We're less likely to have a long track tornado out of a line of thunderstorms, which is what we'll most likely end up see kind of move through the area later on tonight. So almost all indications are that there will be a line of thunderstorms. You can just kind of track that rotation. And again, this is 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 a.m., getting closer to, say, through Boonville to Tupelo, back to Calhoun City and Grenada. About 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe just a little bit east of that. 4 o'clock in the morning, getting closer to Monroe County, back toward Montgomery County. There is a hope, at least, that these storms should weaken a little bit as we lose kind of the what we call the diurnal heating of the day. But if I do pick this up and looking at fuel, you'll notice I still do have more than just a maintenance amount of fuel. We see the greens here. That's a fair amount of fuel there still at the bottom. Anything really above 1,000 in this case is pretty significant for overnight storms to kind of work off of. So there's enough fuel there to really kind of keep these going overnight, deep into the overnight period, into the pre-dawn hours of early tomorrow morning. So I would say certainly hope that perhaps things weaken a little bit overnight, but no guarantees on that by any stretch of the imagination. So we do expect we'll probably have some strong wind potential at the very least, and then possible tornadoes with that overnight round. Looking at the wind gust potential as well. And this again, one projection here. A couple things we'll note. You can see what looks to be, a boundary that's kind of more colliding with the line as it moves in. That could allow for localized areas of spin along that line. Again, midnight, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, most likely time period to really see some of those. But even this kicking out some potentially damaging wind gusts, and that's all the way 10 Z, so that would be, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m. time period there. So again, all night long, unfortunately, beyond midnight when our threats are the greatest. So unfortunately, a chance that does continue into tonight. Beyond tonight, again, tomorrow, and I'll have to get in the right thing here to show you this for a moment. Precipitation, I might be able to get away with this. So the overnight storms on this projection, this is a lower resolution one, coming in a little bit faster. Again, I think the timing is a little fast on this one here, but I'm using this more as a reference to show you things clearing out as we go into tomorrow, and then the threat kind of moving eastward of us as we go into your Tuesday. But by Tuesday night and Wednesday, you'll notice more active weather starting to take shape back to the west. Unfortunately, I ran out of time on that run there, so let's pick it up back with 60 euro. And in doing so, you can see as we head into Wednesday, late Wednesday night, another chance for strong to severe thunderstorms, certainly a preference back to the north and west. Hence the reason when we look at the severe weather threat for Wednesday, you can see it does peak back to the north and west. Most indications are that storms will be the most significant that direction. Still, some could be strong to severe into our area, and tornadoes are absolutely on the table as a possibility. Wherever this line sets up, there's going to be kind of a convergent zone back to the north and west of us likely, where we could have very, very significant amounts of rainfall, potentially flooding rainfall over the course of this week. And they will also be the same spots really focused for the potential for severe weather and tornadoes as well. Note into Thursday that we do have more of the likelihood to probably get some of those thunderstorms down into our area and even into Friday as well. I mean, so I run out of data on this one on Saturday, and it's still a collision course of active weather back to the north and west. I'll go all the way back to 0Z last night. But just to show you that models are pretty consistent that, probably talking about a very stormy week, especially beyond Wednesday, possibly into next weekend. Storm chances, quite a few days there. They might not all line up for severe weather chances for us, but unfortunately it's going to be a very active pattern. The thing that I don't want to miss in all that is that very, very significant amounts of rainfall possible out of this. This shows, as you can see, well, just on that projection there, it kicks out 11 inches. That might not be the exact location, but the takeaway being that there will be a zone back here to the north and west where we're most likely to see, flooding rainfall, significant flooding rainfall. It's not impossible that zone sets up closer to our area. I mean, certainly this shows into Lafayette County, again, one projection at one time, but almost 10 inches there, closer to kind of Water Valley area. I mean, that's probably not going to happen right over there, but you get the point. There's a lot of rainfall. It's very close. Flooding rainfall issues possible over the next week or so in a very significant way. But also, unfortunately, some severe weather chances to go along with that. So again, tonight's threat involves all of us. It is, while this says Sunday, it is after midnight. It is before dawn tomorrow morning in particular that we're concentrating on that threat. And we will have folks, of course, up at the station, meteorologist Gabe Maynor, myself, as necessary. And then, of course, Chelsea will come in, Gabe will go home and kind of get some rest. We're all going to kind of stay rested up for what probably will end up being a busy week. But yeah, severe weather likely overnight. And unfortunately, it'll probably make for kind of a rough sleeping situation. Part of the reason why I'm probably going to end up going and taking a nap as soon as we get done here. So I'm going to take you to WTVA.com/weather call. The reason for that is overnight, on a night like this is where Weather Call pays for itself. It is unfortunately a service that we can't give away free because making phone calls costs money. It's the reason you still pay for a cell phone plan. Same thing on the vendor side there. So for basically $12 a year, it will call you and let you know if you're on a tornado warning. So basically let you know if you need to wake up. Because you might need to wake up in the middle of the night. Pretty decent chance you'll need to wake up, some of us, many of us, to tornado warnings overnight and then get to shelter. So Weather Call is that alert. I recommend you go and buy WTVA.com/weathercall if you want more information. I just type that in there. It's Weather Call, one word, and that's certainly what we recommend. I have family. I will have it tonight for them to make sure they're up and ready to go as well. So updates, Gabe will have one come up here at 5 o'clock on NBC, and of course 10 o'clock tonight as well. I will probably not be in for either of those shows, as I'm going to try to go downstairs, go take a nap here in a minute, so that I'm all rested up and ready to go overnight for what is likely to come, likely to be a busy evening. All right, so make smart decisions, and of course, one other link I'll throw at you here real quick, and you can just honestly, I think WTVA, you can just type in Google WTVA storm shelters, and I believe it's the first thing that pops up. Yep. So even if you just go to the Google machine, type in WTVA storm shelters, first thing that pops up, list of various storm shelters around the region. So highly recommend you go to that site if it's something that that you don't feel like your location is as safe as it can be. We do have that list there as well. A note on storm shelters, every city, every entity has different rules on when they open the storm shelters. A lot of times it's, they wait till tornado watch is issued. Watch will come before warning. It's a situation where, if the ingredients are in place to produce something, National Weather Service issues a watch, right? A tornado watch, severe thunderstorm watch, however that goes. When those ingredients are combined is when they essentially issue a tornado warning. So watch happens before warning. So when that watch is issued, in a lot of cases, not all cases, they end up going and opening up some of these shelters. But I would highly recommend calling your local municipality just to double check to make sure that they are open and they are available there. Of course, that complete list, as you can see kind of scrolling there at our website, WTVA.com. I'll let that go for a second here. We'll pray, and then we're going to kind of send you back on, and we will have updates as necessary. But now's a good time, of course, to do that evaluation on where you're at to make sure that you do identify that safest possible location. Okay. God, protect us this evening. Protect us tonight through this weather. Help us to trust you. So don't allow us to stay anxious and awake necessarily all night long, but help us to recognize that if we are in a vulnerable situation, to make a best decision possible on where to stay the night, where to shelter if the time comes. God, but just help make obvious what our next steps are. Guide us through this, protect us, weaken the storms, allow the shear to not be enough to produce tornadoes, help the wind to not be overly strong. But God, I know that your plan is perfect, and thank you for using us, using me, to help protect these people. And God, I know that you're in charge of everything, so thank you so much for blessing us. In your son's name we pray, amen. Okay, so we will again have updates tonight. Gabe will be on at 5 p.m. He'll be looking at the very latest. He'll have a different version of Storm Tracker than what I just showed you a moment ago there, kind of depicting the individual storms versus the line, how that's going to move through. Of course, he'll have that at 5 p.m. And then, of course, 10 o'clock tonight with the very latest information as well. We'll bring you weather coverage as necessary. We expect most of that will probably be after midnight. It's not impossible that something develops this afternoon out into Arkansas and tries to move in earlier, Arkansas or Louisiana. That's not a high likelihood, high confidence event. But if I go back here to our satellite, we're looking out here. We do have a few isolated storms trying to get going in Louisiana. They are struggling to this point here. So this zone yet to really light up. If it does, that could speed up the timing a little bit. But I think our main round still is likely after midnight, and threats will continue then. So I'm going to go take a nap so I can get myself charged up, ready to go. Hopefully you do the same. All right. We'll see y'all later. We'll talk to you soon. Be careful, be safe, and appreciate all y'all's prayers, and we'll be okay.